Good morning. Thank you everyone for being here on this drizzly morning. It wouldn't be a Best NC event if it wasn't raining, so sorry about that. And hopefully everyone survived the very exciting Super Bowl last night. As Walter introduced, I'm Brenda Berg, the very, very proud CEO of Best NC, and excited about the work that we're endeavoring to do today. I feel like most of you maybe feel the same. I could have sat in that hallway because you are some of the most extraordinary people in North Carolina, and many of you I consider friends. So having you all here today is incredibly important. So 11 years ago, we started hosting these innovation labs with the idea of uncovering and unpacking key strategies to improve education. Walter and the Best NC members, we're so grateful for your leadership, your commitment, and Walter for always being here to support this work. I also want to make a special shout out to our friends at RTI, specifically Olivia Rice, who I believe is, going like this. She and her team had the whole concept of an innovation lab in 2014, so it's been a while. And also, we've always been able to host this convening at SAS. I love this space. I love this particular room. I think it's worthy of the kinds of conversations that we need to have. We should be in spaces like this when we're talking about education. So a big shout out to SAS and particularly the team that makes this happen. So this morning, I'm going to take a few minutes to recap because not everybody's been to every lab. I want to talk about why we host these labs and how they have really helped us keep a laser focus on our journey of educator innovation. We'll take the first part of the morning to reflect. We're going to look back at the challenges we were facing then, which remain the focus of our attention going forward. We're also going to take some time to celebrate. There have been huge accomplishments in the last decade. And yet there's so much work to be done as we look forward at the next decade. But first, reflecting a little bit on these innovation labs. The very first 2014 innovation lab, I remember Olivia, we launched a very comprehensive vision for education called Excellence. And we had 53 working groups, or 13 working groups meeting 53 times to pull this vision together. And what was so important about it is we came up with these 3 strategies. And as the business community, we looked at Elevate Educators and said, we need to focus on that. We realized that that needed to be the strategy because we could and should get behind a talent strategy. But we also knew the road was long and that transforming a 100-plus-year-old system with hundreds of thousands of employees and millions of customers would take time. Taking that to heart a decade ago, in 2015, we began working with educators, researchers, and policymakers to create a clear vision and action steps toward this goal, and the outcomes of these labs have been impactful. By far, my most fun innovation lab was the convening in 2018 when we pulled together this extraordinary group of teachers from all over the state, from all different perspectives, and they created a roadmap for North Carolina on what it means for North Carolina to be first in teaching. Please be like me and use this. I still use this today as my guiding light and our guiding principles. Of these 10 strategies, 8 are fully embedded in our educator innovation strategy, and we loop back to this all the time. I don't think I've ever seen teachers put together a more cohesive plan for what it means to be first in teaching than this one. And one of the things that came out of this work was a pilot called Teach NC, because part of being a professional is being recruited into your profession, and that's what Teach NC does. And so another example is from 2020 and 2021, those fun years, we still managed to meet and we convened and we worked on what is called NC Stride. And that report identified 5 action items that are important to improve the teacher pipeline. And again, the Innovation Lab has productivity. Of those 5, the first one was not just to pilot Teach NC, but actually take what we knew to be successful and make Teach NC a permanent strategy for recruiting teachers. We also have made progress on teacher vacancy data, and today we're really launching our path on teacher apprenticeship. 3 out of 5 isn't bad, but I am confident that efforts to fill hard-to-staff vacancies and reimagine licensure are continuing. Those conversations are definitely ongoing. So I'm excited about the conversation and the possibilities for today. I'm eager to get going, but for just a moment, I really want us to take a step back and think about why we're here. Let's talk about the students and the fact that North Carolina students are not where they need to be. As we all saw recently with the NAEP scores, 30% of our students are proficient in reading or math, with our best performance of 41% for 4th grade math. Let that sit in, right? A third of our students. And those figures make us sort of an average state. But our nation is in the bottom quartile when it comes to math proficiency among our international peers. It is simply, if you've heard this from me before, you will hear it from me again, it is simply not okay to be an average state in a below average country. And if you see where we are there, we're 28th out of 39 countries, and our friends to the north are 5th. And while we launched Educator Innovation 10 years ago, and we're seeing promising practices in how we recruit, prepare, and support educators, the pipeline actually took a turn for the worse right in the middle of this work. And again, something you're going to hear from me a lot today is 41%. This is a graphic that we have had in our facts and figures from the beginning. And a few years ago, we started to see this really worrisome trend. In 8 years, the percentage of teachers, new teachers entering the classroom without a required preparation or experience, no preparation, no experience required, is 41%. It doubled. 41% is a shocking number, but what is even more shocking is that it snuck up on us, and it doubled in just 8 years. And all indications show that this is a national trend, and what we have over the other states is that we know. We have better data than most other states, and so we need to act now, because we know this is a problem. Importantly, of that 41%, 3/4 of these new teachers aren't even enrolled in an educator preparation class when they step into the classroom as a teacher of record. And about half of those candidates leave before their license even has to be renewed. That's 47% leaving in the first year or two of those licenses. The bottom line is that we are exposing students to underprepared teachers, and those teachers are under-supported. So we can't be surprised that teachers then leave at an extraordinarily high rate, and their students are struggling. And it's a vicious cycle, because what happens is we're hiring inexperienced candidates to fill vacancies, and it exacerbates the problem. And here's how it works. Schools hire underprepared teachers because they have to. Right? They have to fill those vacancies. Students need a teacher in that classroom. But beginning teachers, even traditionally, have not been well supported. Walk into any school building and you will find that the beginning teachers typically have the hardest classroom in the building. And they are in their classroom without somebody guiding their practice. Now add to it that now 41% of those new teachers are underprepared and unsupported, and it gets even worse. So unsupported teachers have lower student outcomes. Nobody likes to not be good at their jobs, so unsupported teachers leave at higher rates. And guess what happens? That vacancy rate multiplies. And it adds more pressure to hire even more unprepared teachers. So thanks to so many of you, North Carolina has a plan. It's incomplete and in progress, but we are on a pathway to resolve this problem. And our theory of change is very simple. This is the same thing that we do in the business community. We know that the best schools in North Carolina do one thing. They invest in good people, period, full stop. And that's why the Educator Innovation Plan has 3 pillars: school leadership, access to effective educators, and educator experience. But why? And what does that really look like? So I could talk about that for about 30 minutes, but instead, as many of you know, Best NC has a very talented storyteller on our team who will unpack this in about 7 minutes instead of 30. And Zach will take us on a journey of a student who went to school 10 years ago and what they were facing in their school building, what kinds of challenges they had, and why we seek to resolve them. And then through the course of this morning, we are going to be looking at what those challenges, how we've been addressing those challenges, and seeing the school building through the eyes of his classmate, Ava, who graduated 10 years later, and see where we are in her school building when she has access to advanced teaching roles, principal fellows, and Teach NC, and how things have become better. So without further ado, let's watch Zach's video.
North Carolina has a history of being first. 250 years ago, North Carolinians signed the Mecklenburg Resolves, our nation's first step toward freedom. 130 years later, Wilbur and Orville Wright set up a workshop in Kitty Hawk, mankind's first step toward the moon and beyond. And for the last few years, North Carolina has continuously ranked as the best state in the nation to do business. And those of us at today's Education Innovation Lab have always believed, if we're first in freedom, first in flight, and first in business, why can't North Carolina be first in education too? For a decade now, at Best NC's Education Innovation Lab, educators, policymakers, business leaders, and other education stakeholders have endeavored to make North Carolina the best place in the nation to learn by making it the best place in the nation to be a teacher. Through interconnected research, policies, and programs, together, we've been making that dream a reality. In fact, the conversations had in this very room have produced some of North Carolina's most meaningful, lasting, and effective education transformations ever. It's this collective effort that formed the foundation of what Best NC calls the Educator Innovation Plan. Just look at the incredible work we've achieved so far following this framework. But numbers are numbers. What about the experiences of actual students? Let's look at this progress through the eyes of two students, Tim and Ava. Both were born and grew up in North Carolina, and both went to the same high school just 10 years apart. But while Tim crossed the stage in 2015, Ava flipped her tassel in 2025. And while the school building may look exactly the same in 2025 as it did in 2015, there's a huge difference on the inside. You see, in the 10 years since Tim graduated, the entire school and Ava's future have been transformed by a set of initiatives that were built on research and conversations, just like the ones we'll have today. But come on, how significant of a difference could a decade of policy change really be on their educational experiences? Well, when Tim and his classmates were in school, they were being pushed through an educational environment that was designed and implemented in the 1800s. Sure, the technology and the curriculum have definitely changed since then. But the way schools and classrooms were organized was the same as it was during the Industrial Revolution. What did that mean for Tim? And what did it mean for the people teaching and leading him? Well, we can't say the system was broken. You know the old adage, your systems are perfectly designed to get the results you're getting. Each piece of our outdated education system was carefully designed at one point over the last century and a half. However, over time, those pieces stopped fitting right, or just weren't there altogether. Teacher recruitment was unintentional and archaic, ignoring a changing talent pool and pipeline. The teachers that stuck it out year after year had no real meaningful opportunities for career growth inside the classroom, and effective teachers were tethered to their classrooms, unable to provide support or mentorship. And what about their school leaders? Well, principal recruitment, preparation, and pay wasn't much better. And when that picture came into focus, it didn't look great. As a result, Tim's access to an effective educator was compromised year after year. Sometimes, Tim didn't even have a permanent teacher, but several long-term substitutes, one after another, for an entire school year. And often, it was in really important classes, like math and science. On top of that, compensation relied on stagnant step-and-lane pay schedules where the only thing that determined your pay was years of experience. which ignored teachers' individual skills and talents and the demand for their roles. Who knows how many incredible teachers Tim missed out on in the long run, and how many people felt forced to leave their calling just to make ends meet. Beyond their pay, teachers were leaving because of leadership. As we know, people don't leave a company, they leave a bad boss. And when you consider that principals are basically the chief executives of a school, the way we were recruiting and preparing principals was just as out of date as the rest of the talent system, with self-selection into the profession, poor preparation, and inadequate pay. But when you consider the average principal in North Carolina had 50 direct reports, it wasn't just pay that made their job untenable. That meant it was difficult for even the most experienced, well-prepared principal to be an effective leader. In summary, Tim's teachers and principals didn't have the preparation, support, or resources they needed and deserved to succeed. Which means, in the end, neither did Tim. Who knows how many hardships Tim will face in his life, simply because his educators weren't treated like the professionals they are. Sorry, buddy. But that is where we come in. With these talent changes and students like Tim in mind, key components of what is now known as the Educator Innovation Plan began in 2015. Leveraging best practices in education research, public policy, and the business community's unique talent perspective, we looked closely at Tim's challenges, breaking apart each piece and reimagining how they could all fit together, while adding a couple that were lost along the way. Also that when Ava came along, her puzzle had the ability to form a much different picture. How? By focusing on school leadership, access to effective educators, and educator experience. And after a decade, we have a lot to be proud of. But look, with around 100,000 teachers in about 2,600 schools across North Carolina, not every school has had access to every single one of the innovations that Ava experienced during her academic career. However, every single school in North Carolina does have access to at least one. And that's a start, but there's still a ways to go. That's why, today, at the 2025 Education Innovation Lab, we will review a decade of educator innovation and examine opportunities to further improve the educator pipeline over the next decade, so that students like Tim and Ava can have the best teachers in the nation. Look, we can do this, because remember, first in freedom, first in flight. Join us, and together, let's make North Carolina first in education too.
Let's give a round of applause to Zach. Boy, can you imagine if I had tried to explain that to you? You'd all be sleeping. Zach, really can't thank you enough for this video, and you will see snippets of the video with each of our upcoming speakers as well to see how things are going for Ava. So for a decade now, we've been working on educator innovation, and here are the key components of that work. And they've sort of lived in isolation. They're sort of running in parallel to each other. And sorry if we can go back one. Although I will say that just a month ago, all of the directors of the Principal Fellows programs went to visit an advanced teaching role school. And there was that aha moment of, we're preparing principals for the new way of running our schools, not the old way. And it's really exciting to see how these initiatives are starting to work together. But to be honest, inside the state, these are some of our best kept secrets. Not everybody knows that this is happening. Not everybody knows that North Carolina is really on a path to educator innovation. But outside of North Carolina, we're leading the nation. The North Carolina Principal Fellows program is, next slide, is the only one of its kind in the nation. We're producing 40% of the principal pipeline. Any other state that's even tackled it, it's been at a local level for maybe a handful of principals. Advanced teaching roles is the only statewide initiative for strategic staffing, and I think I'm on a national panel about every other week talking about it. And we're hosting edu-tourism visits to come to North Carolina to see what we're doing. Yeah, Leah Carper's hosting half of them in Greensboro. And then Teach NC is one of the highest recruitment strategies in the country, and you'll hear Gab Barnes talk about it. So we have a lot to be proud of, right? We have a big hill to climb, we have kids to serve, but we do have a lot to be proud of. I do get phone calls just about every week on one of these priorities and some of the other priorities that we're working on. So these aren't, I want to be really clear, these aren't the only 6 initiatives that are happening in North Carolina. These are the ones that have stemmed from the lab. There's a lot of great work going on. The Teaching Fellows Program, teaching as a profession, local district initiatives. There are grow your own strategies. There are higher pay for strategic staffing, for staffing hard to staff schools. Spark NC is a whole new way of thinking about the classroom. Career and College Promise, I mean, what do I need to say? We are leading the nation on that. And there's just so much more. So there's a lot to be proud of. I don't want to limit this conversation to that. But this morning, looking at educator innovation, we will be hearing updates on those 5 key strategies that are underway, and we will be adding teacher apprenticeship to the official list of educator innovation. As we do, you maybe saw in the video, we love the innovation adoption curve. We love the fact that we think about the policy and the research and how districts adopt based on where people are. You think about how the iPhone was adopted. You think about any kind of innovation. You have those early adopters, and you have to think differently about how you're going to get them to opt in because they're willing to try anything. And then you have those laggards who are like, advanced teaching rules is stealing all my teachers, I better jump in, right? And so we have to be thinking really carefully. We can't just pass a policy and hope it gets done. DPI has an incredible role. District leadership has an incredible role. Teachers have an incredible role on this journey, and Best NC, this innovation lab, we need to be thinking about each of those needs of each of those groups at each of those steps along the way. So the ed talks that are coming up, you'll be seeing this innovation adoption curve as sort of our benchmark. We'll be also looking at ways that we can continue to weave these initiatives together to make North Carolina first in teaching and first for students. So I'm excited to get started, almost. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I really want to start with our norms. We've had essentially the same norms for all of these years. They're really important. First of all, be present. And thank you. I mean, we just watched a 7-minute video. I didn't see anybody snoozing on it. Thank you for being present. Participate. Lean in on this. Support productive collaboration. Share airtime equitably. If you're a talker, maybe pull back a little. If you're quiet, encourage someone to speak. Ensure a safe space, and also have grace. Always assume the best of the person you're speaking with.